Guys, let's move over to Florida State. The Wolf of Tallahassee, as I have termed Mike Norvell. We've talked about Knowles coin. It's soaring. We love the price that it's at right now. The bank account is looking great. Florida State went 10-3 last year, right? 5-3 in ACC play. They had a weird 3-game skid to Wake, NC State, and Clemson. But other than that, things were pretty rosy in Tallahassee last season. Mike Norvell is 18-16 in his 4 seasons there. And it seems like second year offensive coordinator Alex Atkins started to figure some things out. The defense looked really good under Adam Fuller, who's in his 4th season. He came over from Memphis with Mike Norvell. So you got a lot of continuity on this staff. Plus, you have the most returning production in the country on both the offense and the defensive side. Jared Verse shocked everybody by coming back as the one of the potential number 1 edge rushers off the board in the NFL draft. He shocked everyone when he said, "Nope, I'm coming back to Florida State. I've got one more run in me." Him coming back on that defense is going to be scary. And then you look at some of these notable players on offense for Florida State. You got Jordan Travis, who is certainly a Heisman contender, threw for 3,200 yards last year, 24 touchdowns, but he also does it with his feet, over 400 yards rushing. A loaded running back room. You've got Trey Benson, who almost got to 1,000 yards a season ago, 9 touchdowns. And then a couple of wide receivers who are just incredibly lethal. Johnny Wilson, who's a great transfer from Arizona State. He shined last season. And oh, by the way, you've got Keon Coleman, who comes in from Michigan State out of nowhere, leaving the Spartans after spring ball. He's down to Tallahassee. I mentioned Jared Verse on the defense, 9 sacks a season ago. The linebackers in Kalen DeLoach and Tatum Bethune are both really good. They combined, guys, 149 tackles last year, 17 of them tackles for loss. And then they get Fentrell Cypress, the second from Virginia, one of the best corners, if not the best corner in the ACC. He's playing for the worst team. He says, "Hey guys, it's been real here playing for the Who's, but I'm going to go try for an ACC championship," and goes to Tallahassee. Led the country with nearly 2 passes defended per game last season, which is just unreal. If you're watching on the YouTube side, you see a couple of impact transfers as well. Braden Fiskey, and then you've got Hakeem Williams, a 5-star wide receiver. Lucas Simmons comes in, a 4-star offensive tackle. Guys, things are really good for Florida State, is what I'm trying to say right now. When you look across the board, and we'll get into their schedule in just a second, but when you look across the board, we know the talent's there. Let me ask you this. What is preventing all 3 of us from picking them as the ACC champions?
I think, is it still just a hangover from the start of the Mike Norvell era where, for me, that might be that, because even throughout their great run last year, I know they had the stretch in the middle of the season where they lost 3 straight, but even through all of that, even when they beat LSU, even when they, finished the season with 6 straight wins, including the bowl, there's just a small part of you that's like, yeah, but this could just be a one-off year. But when you dive into the stats, guys, Garrett, if you want to pull up those numbers from last year one more time, nothing about that is fluky, right? It's not like they were, they had a crazy turnover margin and they just really capitalized off of turnovers. That's not going to repeat itself. Yeah, they were really high in the nation in sacks, but it's because they have elite edge rushers that are coming back this year. Number 1 returning production in the country. It's not often that you have this easy of a case to say, yeah, there's going to be an encore performance. But I mean, obviously, we don't want to give it the kiss of death with, locking anything up as a guarantee. But this is, in college football, this is about as guaranteed as you can get, right? All the returning production coming back. When you're looking for the recipe of an elite team, it's elite quarterback play plus elite pass rushing and just overall defensive competency, right? And all 3 of those boxes are checked by this Florida State team. They plugged some holes with some awesome players from the transfer portal. Keon Coleman. I love the defensive line additions from the portal as well with Braden Fisk. It's exciting. Like, it's really hard to not just go to the moon with this Florida State team. And when you look at the schedule, there's some tough stretches. The LSU game to start off the year is going to be a fantastic game once again. They play Clemson week 4. After week 4, the schedule really softens out a little bit. They do have Duke in there at home, rivalry game with Miami at home, and the big rivalry game at Florida to end the year. But with a front loaded schedule, if they can just get one of those two early games, right? If they can just split LSU and Clemson, you have to feel really, really good about making them run and maybe having something really special by November.
Yeah, well, and Mitch, you asked what's holding any of us back from picking them to go. Nothing's holding me back. I picked them to go 12-0. What am I supposed to not like about this team? You've got a quarterback who really just doesn't turn the ball over, who's a threat both to run and pass, who put up big numbers. I mean, maybe you'd like to see from the elite quarterback. You might want to see the touchdowns come up overall. You want to see him score a little bit more, but you look around, he's got a great running game. You pick up Keon Coleman in the portal to go with Johnny Wilson. That's kind of disgusting. That might be that might be one of the better wide receiver tandems in the country.
I think that's my favorite wide receiver room in the whole country, not just in the ACC, but maybe in the entire country.
Yeah, I mean, it's a couple of for sure studs. It's certainly up in the mix for some of the better receiver rooms. I'm trying to think, probably Ohio State and maybe Washington better, but they're strong case for third, if that. And I mean, what am I supposed to not like? You got Jared Verse on the defensive line. You got a lot of help on that defense. Like you're saying, Trey, nothing about that's fluky. If anything, you look at some of the turnover, and the penalties and stuff like that, you could see a lot of that come up, and then you're really cooking. And additionally, if you look at the schedule, they get a whole lot of stuff at home, right? Yeah. If you're looking at this, you've got LSU technically in the state of Florida. Yes, they have to go to Clemson, but you get Duke at home, Miami at home. I'm looking at this and I'm saying, what am I not supposed to like about this Florida State team? I can't find anything that I don't like about them. So when I'm looking up and down this schedule, I say, yeah, I think Florida State has to be my pick to go 12-0 and win the ACC. So that's where I am on them. I know you've been pretty high on them, Mitch, with the Knowles coin, but I'm buying up as much as I can right now.
I have been, and the LSU game, look, it was kind of a weird bounce of the ball last year, right? A blocked extra point that maybe keeps LSU from winning that game. I wrote in the preview, I feel like that just kind of like by the law of averages swings back to LSU this year. And of course, we'll preview the Tigers when we get to the SEC. But they're going to be a whole lot of fun too. That's going to be a must-see game in the opening week of college football. Clemson, I'm not in the habit of picking teams to go 12-0. I think that game on the road against Clemson is just kind of tough to predict Florida State to win, especially early in the season, but certainly very possible. I will say, if it is Clemson and Florida State that get to Charlotte, I am certainly having to think long and hard about Clemson beating them twice, right? Like, this is an incredibly talented team, potentially a more explosive offense. They certainly have better wide receivers, and even, maybe not a better running back in Trey Benson, but I think he's going to open a whole lot of eyes this season. I think Florida State has a very real potential to be your ACC champion and, to be in the college football playoff discussion, which, again, doing wonders for the Knowles coin.
And if you had told us that at the beginning of last season, even the most staunch Knowles coin investors would have just said you're crazy, right? Like going into that LSU game last year, even as LSU's lining up to kick that extra point that ultimately got blocked and it ended up with Florida State spurring that magical run they had last year. This is just what an amazing turnaround by Mike Norvell. What an awesome testament it is to his ability to just stay the course when all the pressure is on him. Think about the recruiting losses that he had, that they're calling for his head. He turns around with a 10-win season and has him right on the cusp of returning to glory. Can't say enough great things about the job he's doing.
Guys, I'm going to put in a call. I'm going to amend my earlier take. Florida State will be the ACC champ this year. They're going to go 10-2. Yeah. I'm going to give the win to LSU in the opener, I think, right now, and I'm going to say Clemson wins that game at home close, but I think it's going to be a good game. But the more I talked myself into Clemson writing that preview, but you know what?